Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. And if you are joining for the first time, this is part of our industry series, for which we meet every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. We review one vendor or the solution. For today, we have a very interesting solution. It's called Aptin Ross. So we are going to have a lot of fun discussing that. Before we do that, we are going to start with everybody's intros. I am going to start with my intro. And if you don't know me, Sam Gupta, principal at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm. On that note, I am going to move to Dave for his intro.
Thanks, Sam. Hey, everybody. My name is Dave Crysler, and I own an operations consulting business working with leaders in the manufacturing and distribution spaces, helping them to systemize and do some business process optimization. And I come to you with more than 20 years in various operations leadership roles, and excited to be here with y'all. Thanks for having me, Sam.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Dave. Andy, can I ask you to introduce yourself next?
Yeah, thank you very much, Sam. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Andy Pratico. I've been involved in ERP software for manufacturers for over 4 decades, which is a long, long time. I've worked all over North America, and I have a book that it's on Amazon, helps companies evaluate and uncover the truth about ERP systems. And I take particular pride in helping companies with that exact task. So there you go.
Just
Thanks,
4 decades, Andy, so short time.
Only 4 decades.
Only 4 decades, yeah.
1981, April of 1981.
If only we could find some more experience on this panel.
I know, that's the problem.
Right? Amazing, guys. Thank you so much for being here. And if you're in the audience, make sure you guys post your questions and comments. We don't have a lot to talk about today. So hopefully we can get some questions and we can address them. But for the most part, we are going to start with the briefing and then we'll be covering the slides. So I am going to start with the corporate strategy as we always start, Dave and Andy. And then you can chime in. And I don't know, see how many other products we have reviewed for Aptin. I don't know. I would think this is probably going to be 4th or 5th.
4th or 5th for sure.
Right. We have done Made to Manage. We have done Made to Accenta last week. I guess we have done
M1.
That's ECI.
Sorry, that's ECI.
Yeah,
Pardon me.
that's ECI. Aptin. What else Aptin has?
They've got a lot.
Yeah, they have a ton.
I have to look it up, which ones we've done, but we've done quite a few.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's still many that we haven't done.
Yeah, and Aptin, from the corporate strategy perspective, they are very similar to Infor. In fact, their products look very similar to Infor. I don't know if they are sort of ganging up to make the blue color exactly the way blue is supposed to look, for Infor and Aptin. But there is something around Aptin and Infor, the way these companies started. They were started by finance people, private equity, and they wanted to sort of be the integrator as opposed to creator of the products. That's how Aptin started. So the mindset is very similar, the way they think about these spaces. Aptin has their own sort of spaces and how they like to differentiate in the market. But overall, the philosophy in bringing these ERP together is very similar. Obviously, Infor started this trend, but then the other ERP vendors sort of followed suit. Overall, in terms of the mindset, I think Aptin and Infor are pretty close. The way Apicor approaches the market is slightly different, even though they have very similar strategy in how they approach the market in finding the purpose-built product and selling those, in creating sort of the suite experience for the product. ECI is doing the same thing for the smaller spaces. So in the case of Aptin, their differentiator among these 4 or 5 purpose-built product is going to be that Aptin like to differentiate in the Europe market, and from the geo perspective, they are trying to differentiate. They are trying to play in slightly smaller market than in 4 and Epic, or in general where they are trying to play. So Aptin Ross, if you review their screens, obviously the competitor for Aptin Ross is going to be ECID COM. That's going to be number one. Infor M1, and Infor M1 in general is a very strange product because it can act like Aptin Accenta. It can also act like Aptin Ross. So in general, Infor M3 is a very interesting product. Now, the other comparable for Aptin Ross is going to be QAD. They are doing a lot more
No question.
and process manufacturing now.
M3 is more targeted at larger companies, though, aren't they? Or
Infor M3 is definitely targeted for way larger, but I'm talking about the industry user for these products.
The process,
Exactly. They are trying to target similar industries, different size. Sage X3 obviously is going to be here in general in terms of the
that's
industry.
probably the number one competitor to them. Yep.
Exactly. So we are looking at Sage X3, we are looking at Infor M3, we are looking at ECID COM, we are looking at QAD. Plex is doing a lot of FNB these days. But overall, when you look at the process versus discrete, and for a lot of ERP folks, that's a very binary distinction. In general, the way they like to think about the ERP market space. But when you get into the real process, you have no idea how complicated it gets. Okay, discrete is still okay. Process is a beast in general. The way the processes are set up inside the industries, and each industry is going to be very different. And that's why companies like to be extremely careful in terms of which process vertical they want to position themselves. And for example, let's say whatever may work for dairy may not work for chemical. Whatever may work for chemical may not work for food and beverage, because the way these formulas are designed, they are very different. In general, these patches are going to be very tight to your PLM as well. And each of these PLMs or these micro verticals are going to be very different. So in general, the process verticals are far more complicated in general. And even within process manufacturing, each of the products are going to have its own sweet spot. Now, when you look at the process manufacturing space, okay, there are a lot of different interesting layers in that as well. Okay, so some of them are going to be, let's say, if you are a chemical manufacturer, but if you are selling to aftermarket, good luck with that. Because now we are talking about a lot of automotive flavors, that you need to comply with, because then you have to get into the, you are in the automotive ecosystem and you need to comply with their compliance, forecasting. So it gets very interesting the way these things work. Then you might have e-commerce layer. Then you might have the transportation WMS layer, which is very common in these spaces as well. So again, the process verticals are very, very, very interesting, the way they work and the way they operate, and you are going to see that inside these products. Dave, you unmuted. Comments?
Yeah, I more a question, Sam, because this isn't a space that I've done much work in. I'm, familiar, especially in my print manufacturing days, from the ink suppliers would be a great example of this, right?
Yeah.
But my question is really around, so with that kind of infrastructure and complexity, do you see in this space a lot more bolt-ons and kind of, not out of the box functionality? I'm just curious, because it seems to me like, especially for like S&OP Planet, like different components would really, you'd probably be better suited to try to identify some additional components to be able to take advantage of, a full planning cycle with this.
Yeah, so great question. And typically, if you are going to find the bolt-ons, good luck with that, to be honest, okay? It's going to be really tricky. So either you buy a suite or you buy a horizontal ERP in general. Okay, that's the approach that most companies should take. Some companies do it right way. Some companies do it difficult way. Okay, so when you are looking at the full suite experience, so for example, Aptin Infor, Appicore, QAD, the way they approach the market, they are going to give you the box of everything that you are going to be needing. Now, if you are willing to replace everything with their solution, great. As soon as you change one variable, good luck with that, because that becomes very complicated in general. Okay, you are probably going to end up paying more if you try to replace that. And the tighter the ecosystem is going to be. For example, in general, Aptin is a very closed ecosystem. They like to sell it in the box, even though they might claim that, you know what, I'll sell any component of my, but their goal is to get foot in the door. I mean, that's what they are trying to do. And their goal is to sort of sell the follow-on products. But in general, you are going to find two cases in the industry, the way industry likes to operate. Aptin Infor, what they are thinking in their head is, okay, they want to sell everything, full suite experience, controlled by Aptin. You are not going to find consultants in the market who specialize on Aptin, because Aptin is the one who is trying to get the professional services dollars. They are trying to get the support dollars. Okay, and the reason for that is because you don't have much of a talent outside, to be honest. The way these products are structured, because they are probably carrying right now how many 50 products or probably more. And when you are carrying as many products, it's very hard to create the same ecosystem that your Microsoft, Oracle, SAP is going to have. Very different approach, very different mindset, depending upon where you are in your journey. If you are a very large company, for the most part, you are probably going to go for slightly more horizontal ERP, because you are probably involved in a lot of different M&A cycle. If you are going to be this tight overall from your business model perspective, it becomes very difficult to scale. Let's say today you are supplying ink, but tomorrow you are buying a company trying to vertically integrate, and maybe you want to buy a print manufacturing company. If you want to buy, welcome to a new ERP.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of these systems like Ross, and you mentioned X3 and a couple other ones that are targeted, that are true ERPs targeted for the process manufacturing. Most of them have most of what a process manufacturer will need, so the bolt-on thing isn't as required. However, you'll notice in the smaller projects, like I know one company that bought SAP Business One, and they bought this add-on called Process Pro, which is very popular. So in the smaller ones, they'll or from QuickBooks, and they'll add on Process Pro. So on these smaller projects, commonly you'll note bolt-ons more often, whereas in the larger projects, these systems should have most of what they need.
Exactly. So depending upon whether you want to go to that route, that's one possibility where you are buying add-on. In case of Process Pro, that's still a decent add-on in my mind, because that has a lot of installations. But there are going to be some add-ons that are probably going to have 2 installations. Okay, so even if you're buying SAP Business One and a product has 2 installations, good luck with the quality of the code, because they cannot afford to pay to those developers.
The hiccup there, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, but the hiccup whenever you do a bolt-on, I don't care if it's Process Pro or whatever it is you have that thing in the middle called an interface, and you always have challenges with upgrades, especially with upgrades, juggling the main accounting system with the interface with the bolt-on. But I'll tell you what I really I advise people about against bolt-ons is you never have 2 software companies that have a consistent relationship and strong relationship forever. Eventually, that relationship will erode. And if it erodes and you have one of those 2, you're in trouble.
Exactly, Andy. But I mean, that problem you are probably going to get with a lot of internal add-ons as well, because they all are fighting with each other. So yes, you are absolutely right that is going to be a problem, but there are going to be some add-ons that are probably equally good as the internal add-ons. Internal add-ons, the kind of challenges that we have seen in our experience is going to be related to support, regardless of whether those 2 teams are owned by Infor or by third party. Obviously, when you have third party, just another layer.
Support's out the window because you're dealing with somebody else.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I mean, even with Process Pro, I don't know if you are going to get everything that you are going to get with the suite approach, to be honest, because these businesses, in my mind, need a lot more.
Yes.
From the TMS perspective, from WMS perspective, inbuilt fleet functionality.
No question.
They are going to have their own fleet. The QC is so complicated. You name
Process
the piece
Pro
of...
is more for the entry level. It'll do a fine job, but as soon as you get to a certain size, you got to start looking at something more of an enterprise solution.
Yeah, and they typically have a lot of admin, overhead. In general, they are managing a lot of processes on a spreadsheet. They are not managing everything. I mean, they are just going to be jumping around in these systems. That's how most businesses are, especially these ones. They are not going to get the full experience of the ERP. Their processes are probably not going to be as mature. So depending upon, I guess, the maturity cycle where you are overall in terms of your planning, scheduling, how mature do you want to get with your operations? That's what is going to dictate what is going to work for you. But typically, most businesses are all over the place. I mean, nobody's like 100% mature. I'm yet to see that business, unless you are probably going to be private equity owned, right, Dave?
I think even in that space, you'd be hard pressed to find that. But yes, it would be impressive to uncover that unicorn.
That's what everyone says about me, though. They don't say I'm mature; they say I'm old.
Andy is so much fun. Okay, guys. So touching on some more, layers here with respect to the solution before we move to the slides. So I guess we had really good debate there overall from the process perspective. Now, when you look at the Ross solution, this is probably one of the go-to products for Aptin. In general, they are committed to the process and food and beverage space. They have a lot more revenue coming from food and beverage and DTC verticals in general, the way they like to think, the kind of acquisition strategy that they have had. Their acquisition strategy has been very aligned in general with food and beverage. They have acquired WMS, which has had a lot of installations in the food and beverage space. They have acquired some of the Industry 4.0 capabilities. So this is probably their go-to product. Now, overall, from the interface perspective, Andy, I don't know if you know more than what I do. I mean, see, especially in the public demos, we could not find a ton of demos. Obviously, it's a very close-guarded system. These guys don't want to tell anything. Okay, unless you get into a sales call, then only you get to know what this product is about.
Didn't get too much.
Right? So that's how closed the system is. Like, there is like zero documentation available for these products. If you are an outsider, if you are an Aptin salesperson, then you have access to pretty much everything. But if you are not Aptin salesperson, you don't get to see anything unless you are willing to pay to Aptin. So that's the challenge overall with these closed systems as well as the network. But I could not find if the interface is modernized, especially in their YouTube demos that they have published. It's very outdated screens right now. And for the most part, their goal, and Aptin was owned by Vista Equity, the way they like to work overall, if you look at their portfolio companies, whether you talk about Kibo that we have reviewed recently, which is the e-commerce player, but they are focusing on the marketing part of the makeup or the cosmetic changes. That's what they like to make. Okay, so they acquire these companies because these mom and pop vendors are probably not going to have as much dollars overall for the sales and marketing. So they are making the cosmetic changes. They are not improvising the product itself. Aptin also spends a lot overall in terms of the support, and they are known to have really good support, because if you don't get support from Aptin, then I don't know where you are going to get from, because nobody else knows those products, and you don't have any documentation, so good luck with that. But luckily, at least with Aptin is decent, at least with the support. Now, you guys have any other comments before I move on to the slides? No? All right, guys. So we typically touch, as part of these reviews, many different layers. So this is the market position layer, and we are looking at their claims in terms of the kind of claims they are making in the marketing material, and then we sort of validate that with the data that we get from many other perspectives. So here they are trying to claim that they are looking for growing mid-market specialty chemicals, pharmaceutical, biotech organizations, and food and beverage manufacturers. Now, when you look at mid-market could mean a lot of different things. And Andy always likes to ask me, okay, what is the size here? Uh, if you look at some of the reviews that we found, okay, so those reviews are companies with 5,000 to 500 to 1,000. Some of them are there, then 1,000 to 5,000. That's probably the max that we have been able to find. Shockingly enough, okay, for some reason, those large companies are able to survive on these products. Now, we don't have enough details whether they are using this at the subsidiary level or at the division level. Sometimes that is also the case. Sometimes the way the ERP products is going to be used, that is going to drive whether it can really support the transactions that you are going to be performing on the ERP and how slow it is going to be. Because again, every database has sort of size in mind in terms of which business can it handle. So you need to keep that in mind. And again, everything matters. Well, how many transactions are you processing, and what is going to be the length of those transactions as well? When you look at the IT operational capacity, and it's no different than your inventory planning or operations planning. It's the same number of variables that you need to check, and you need to figure out, okay, what kind of solution do you need for that? So mid-market could be tricky. Then they are talking about specialty chemicals, pharmaceutical, biotech organizations, and food and beverage manufacturers. That's fair. They are definitely in the chemicals, pharma, biotech, food and beverage. Those four, for the most part, I don't know if they are going to find everything that a pharma manufacturer is going to need. They will struggle, especially when you talk about all of those DSCSA compliance. I don't know if they have a sort of the skin or the layer, or what do you call that, addition? ND, yeah, some people call it. There could be that, but pharma is very deep in general. The kind of things that they are going to be needing, unless you're customizing. Now, here they are talking about ensuring compliance and recallability. And recallability is very interesting layers as well that you are going to see in this. And sometimes, the way these products are designed and the kind of, markets they target. So a discrete manufacturing product is also going to target the process manufacturing verticals. And sometimes it's almost a shock. Why is a discrete manufacturing product targeting the process manufacturing? Because the most natural extension for a discrete manufacturing, for example, let's say QAD is primarily a discrete manufacturing product. Flex primarily a discrete manufacturing product, okay? But they are also targeting process manufacturing, because if you look at the transactions, the kind of verticals they target in their in the discrete, okay, some of the processes that those guys are going to need, for example, automotive have a little adjacency the way it works with the chemicals, because Dave's example, okay, ink manufacturer selling to print is going to be very similar to your print manufacturer. So that's where these sort of layers are coming from, because these guys, the way they sell these products, if they start selling to automotive, the next logical extension is going to be who else is hanging out in the automotive market. That's how these products are designed. That's how their go-to-market strategies are designed. So that's why sometimes, the automotive product naturally is going to sell to your food and beverage. It's going to sell to the pharma. That's how they work. They don't sell to aerospace, because aerospace has very different processes in general. So it's very, very, very interesting the way the products evolve.
What size of a pharma manufacturer would QAD be a fit for?
So QAD definitely targets slightly larger accounts in general. QAD is a larger product, okay? It is localized. So for example, when you look at Aptin Ross, it is designed for that one site, maybe two sites, those kind of manufacturers.
Small to mid-size.
Exactly. QAD is a far more global product. I think the right comparable for QAD is going to be Infor M3.
Gotcha.
That's
so
probably
like the
right
250 million or larger size?
QAD does sell in these smaller verticals, but for the most part, 100 million plus is what you're looking
100
at.
million. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and that's very similar positioning to Infor M3. Yes, they officially are going to say 250, but
250, but they'll come down to 100. Yeah,
exactly. Very similar positioning. I would say the Sage X3 also has very similar positioning. Sage X3 in general is going to be slightly richer product from the finance perspective, because obviously it's a very deep financial product.
But it scales down though too, doesn't it? It's got smaller customers too.
Sage X3?
Yeah. Am I
How
wrong?
small are we talking about, Andy? I'm posing the wrong question to you.
20 million?
20 million Sage X3? Are you serious?
Am I wrong?
I don't know. I mean, yes, I have seen some, but that could be a stretch in my mind.
Yeah, you might be right. You might be right.
That could be a stretch, because Sage X3 in general is a bigger product, but you could be right, because I've also heard, I mean, they are selling to discrete verticals, but in general, the way Sage X3 product is designed, you are not going to get as much operational functionality. So sometimes, these smaller manufacturers, they are literally checking the boxes, and whoever is going to have more boxes, those are the products that they are going to buy. They are not looking at the development talent. They are not looking at customizability. They are not looking at documentation. They are not looking at localization, globalization. Once you get to, let's say, $1 billion, okay, you have a very different IT organization. You are going to have very different philosophy, the way you are going to think. Or even $500 million organization, somehow they think very differently, because they are trying to sort of segment all of these capabilities in their buckets, and they have very different architecture in general, the way they like to think. But when you look at these smaller customers, their mindset is very different. They are looking for that sweet functionality. So they will not appreciate Sage X3 in my mind. And the reason for that is they are not getting as much for their money. But bigger customers, they are going to appreciate, because they are getting far deeper financials. When you are going to get into that public reporting, Sarbanes-Oxley, auditing, then you have slightly mature CFO who really understand, how to basically make money from ERP systems, I guess.
Strong FDA certifications and things like for QA and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, CFOs that have gone through, let's say, 4 or 5 rounds, they sort of understand, where the strengths are of most ERP systems. So you need to go through as many cycles to be able to understand how to sort of. But by the time you are going to do 5th, you are probably going to get retired. So that's the reality of ERP industry, I guess.
I've heard the QAD quality module is like one of the best.
QAD likes to be very, conservative, the way they like to approach the market in general. And if you look at their market positioning overall from the kind of, patches that they like to target, they are extremely picky. They like to go after the verticals where they are going to be successful overall from the product and the manufacturing operations perspective. And that's how you should be selecting ERP in general. Quality module could mean a lot of different things. Okay, quality processes are very different when you go from one industry to the next. For example, let's say if you go to chemical, okay, chemical, the kind of terms that they are going to be using, the kind of test cases that they are going to have, the kind of sampling that you are going to be doing, the kind of SPC you are going to be using for your shop floor, completely different, guys. Completely different. Okay, dairy is going to have very different experience. So even though, for example, in 4 and 3, they like to talk about process, but again, inside process, everything is very different in general. The way the quality processes work, as well as the way your the formula sort of evolves during the process itself. Yeah. So here, guys, I mean, the compliance and recallability is what we were touching on. Recallability is going to be very common in the case of automotive, and that's why these companies are able to target food, because food is going to have the similar recallability. So that's why it's just easier to sort of attack that vertical. You are going to have recallability. You are probably going to have QC. Automotive is big on QC as well. So it's not just the bomb. I mean, it's just easier to create the formula as opposed to creating everything else that the other discrete verticals are going to be needing. So that's the overall mindset, how these products design their capabilities and how they sort of structure their roadmap. Any comments, guys? No?
Well, okay. It's, obviously with any type of product that's potentially going to be consumed, food, beverage, whatever the case, but supplements, any drugs, pharma, you need shelf life and expiry dates, and this is obvious that that's designed exactly for that industry.
Exactly. But I mean, you could actually need that in the agriculture space as well, but this product is not going to work for agriculture.
No.
Agriculture has very different SNOP processes. It's very retail-centric organization in general, the way agriculture space works. So again, there are always layers, and it gets very complicated, to be honest, okay? And you need to know these layers from the product psychology perspective. Otherwise, you will struggle with the ERP system in general. So here, yes, the expired date and the short shelf life is going to be important. That's why they are able to target, food and bev, but they are not targeting agriculture because it's not going to work for agriculture, I guess. But they are also not targeting any sort of distribution. Agriculture tend to be slightly more distribution, retail-centric organization in general. So they are not targeting all of that. And then Dave likes to talk about the operational processes. That's a different beast altogether when you look at the agriculture, because we are looking at the crop yield, farm yield, right, Dave?
Well, and commonly with a process type product, it's continuous process.
Okay, so now we are opening another conversation. Okay, when you look at the continuous process, it's very different. Okay, so none of the ERP that I know really work in those spaces, to be honest. Okay, because you don't know how to sort of cost because continuous is supposed to be continuous. The oil is running, so where did you find the bomb? Okay, so that's where the real challenge is, to be honest. If you and Andy froze, I guess. I don't know if he's still here. He has that funny face.
It does look like he's frozen.
Yeah. So Andy, I don't know if you can hear us, but the continuous is a very different patch, and once Andy comes back, we'll probably touch on that. But for now, Dave, unless you have any other comment, we can move to the next one.
Yeah, we can move on.
Okay, we need to watch for Andy as well once he comes back. So I'll minimize my screen here. So here we are talking about traceability, and the way traceability works, to be honest, it's very interesting. Because one of the things that, Dave, I don't know whether you guys are able to notice or not, here we are looking at trucks. Can you believe this? Okay, like literally trucks are part of the traceability. And when you say trucks are part of the traceability, what it means is, you need to have the logistics integrated as part of your operations. And that's why some of the products that do really well in the food and beverage agriculture space, they are always going to have the logistics that is going to be integrated as part of your ERP processes. Microsoft Dynamics is probably the best example. Okay, they like to play really well in the food and bev, even though they are not going to have as much last mile functionality, but they win a lot in food and bev. And that's why they had to design the TMS as part of your ERP experience. Now, that's a very different product. Okay, each ERP is going to have some sort of integration. Some like to embed their SNOP, QAD, SNOP, big time. The whole ERP is designed around SNOP processes. Okay, if you have to use those as the same SNOP process with any other product, you are looking at a completely different product. Infor has a completely different product for supply chain. Okay, when you look at the end-to-end traceability of supply chain, when you get into that control tower functionality, where you look at the OMS scenarios, WMS, TMS, so you are looking at very different product, but you are never going to have that embedded experience. Not every business needs embedded experience, but in some patches, for example, agriculture, you probably need that. That's why QAD has designed it this way. That's why you have the in this particular case. And now, if you look at the QAD product, QAD has acquired HCM product. Okay, that's a very learning, compliance, labor productivity experience on the shop floor, which is very interesting because that's a HCM product. Okay, that was always sort of the HCM category, but HCM is also embedded with your shop floor experience. For example, let's say if you look at Plex, okay, the way Plex MES is designed, the whole HR product, the HCM product, it has a lot of functionality pre-baked as part of your MES. Now, that's a different beast because if you go to your automotive sector, these processes need to be part of your MES. If you don't have that, you cannot schedule. And the reason for that is because the skill set is very important. Okay, you need to know which welder has which particular certification, and if they are qualified to work on that specific process, you are going to find this specific process in food and pharma. So there are process similarities across these industries, even though ERP industry always like to put under, are you process, are you discrete? That's what a salesperson is going to know.
Or that's what they're going to ask you straight off the hop anyways.
Exactly. And Andy, since you are back, I mean, we were talking about the continuous operations. Continuous operations, it's a very, very, very different beast. So far, honestly speaking, I personally don't have as much experience. I only have experience of failures. So if you want to talk about failures, I'm more than happy to talk.
Well, okay. Yeah, continuous process versus batch process, again, are completely different.
Exactly. So in the continuous process, when you are running the whole pipe, when you are looking at the real pipeline operations, there is no sort of fixed period where your process stops.
It's 24/7.
Exactly. So you sort of don't know. Well, 24/7 could be in automotive as well. Okay. But in the automotive, you at least have a product and you know what is going inside that product. Okay. But in the case of continuous operations, oil well, okay, mining, I would say they do a lot of continuous as well in terms of process. So there is no sort of state of a product. There is no bar. Okay. It's all continuous. So how do you define the boundaries? It's a huge challenge. You don't know what your product is costing. So the only way that most companies, there are some mom and pop ERP systems that do well in those spaces. I don't know what they do, to be honest. Okay. So they are probably going to just compute, okay, whatever, oil flew in this 1 hour, divide by whatever, product that you have created, that's probably going to be their measurement. And they are probably filling those tanks, and based on the tanks, they are probably going to identify the product, or maybe based on liter, or I don't know. But it's very complicated the way the operations work, the way accounting, scheduling. It's a different ballgame. Yeah. So continuous is good. Any other comments, guys, before I move on? Okay. So here we are looking at traceability, right? So traceability is very interesting. You need your logistics data. If you don't have that, and this is going to be reported to regulatory bodies, okay, they care for this. Can you believe this? Okay. So you have to have that as part of your ERP. If you don't have, if you are going to have gaps in your ERP versus your TMS, good luck with that. That could be a challenge if they come to know that you have real gaps, because they are literally looking for end-to-end traceability. And sometimes these guys are trying to be creative overall from their manufacturing process perspective. And I don't know whether I told you guys a story of one of the shops that I was at, and they had created, they were in the needle business, right? Now, these needles are very hard to sort of manufacture because they have to punch holes in those needles. So what they had done is they had literally, stamped those needles on a coil, and the coil used to roll inside the machine. Can you believe this? Okay, so that's how they had created. Now, when you are going to be costing the coil, it's a different ballgame. The way it works, it's all wasted product. But they had to do this because they have to, number one, be traceable. Each of the needles that is going through your process, you need to trace the material, the lot, the batch. Can you believe this? It gets that complicated. So it's a very interesting operation, the way it works.
It gets to be complicated, but with more advanced systems, either a barcode scan or some type of electronic data collection, or even direct integration into the machine, usually can capture that data pretty easily.
And where are you going to put the barcode? On a needle?
Now, sometimes you don't have to have the barcode on the actual product. Sometimes you have a sheet saying needle barcode next to your screen, or like I said, a touch screen type data collection device, or in straight MES where you're hooked into the actual machine for production capture.
Yeah, it gets very interesting. Again, that's a very continuous operation the way they are doing. I mean, they typically,
or you put the barcode on the needle too.
You can do that, right, Andy?
I'd have to use different glasses.
As long as you are not injecting that needle on me, okay? Because that's going to be a really thick needle,
exactly.
I guess. So it gets very interesting the way manufacturing operations work, because obviously each of these layers are probably going to be applicable in terms of which ERP is going to work for you. So overall, it's very fascinating. Now,
but you know that these this might be an older software, but these screens they have a nice graphical look to them.
Nice is very subjective, Andy. Okay,
I know that. I know that.
So this is probably IE5, IE6 experience, maybe 7. Dave, you can tell me, which one it is. So I always like to define the numbers there, right? So IE is probably the best example in terms of the UX. So if you're looking at a system in 2023, you are probably looking at, Edge or Chrome or something similar to that, right? So I think that's how you should be defining the user experience. So this is not modernized. This is not re-architected. This is most certainly not cloud native. Okay, obviously they are trying to pretend, but a lot of companies are trying to pretend. Some of them have simply changed the UI to make it pretty because most customers don't understand that, but the backend is still COBOL. But here, even these screens are not modernized. The only thing Aptin and Vista Equity, they like to do is they are simply going to make the marketing changes. So the website is going to look pretty. The demos are going to look pretty.
Right.
The decks are going to look pretty. Product, who cares?
As long as they buy.
Once you have signed 5-year contract, good luck with that.
Somebody else takes care of you, not me.
Exactly. So here, if you look at the kind of reporting, so this is the reporting screen chart that we are looking at. And here you have to report the carrier name. Can you believe this? The regulatory bodies, they care for this. Okay, give me the whole traceability when the recall is going to be there. So there is going to be a name, or because that company is involved and they need to know whoever is actually touched the product. In pharma, they care for every single entity that is touching the product in general. Here we have version, stage, yield unit, yield total input, yield total output, yield percentage, and again yield. So many different yields, right? And that's very common in the process space in general. The way they look at, because productivity is very important for these companies, the way they like to think, the way they like to work. And again, if you're going to be using a discrete product in this space, good luck with that. But let's say if you have the discrete plus process mix in your business model, it could become very tricky in general to implement. And again, you need to look at the percentage. And there are just too many variables, I guess, to decide which ERP is going to be most efficient. Even the MES is very different in general, the way it works, the kind of measurements it is going to have. Yes, OE is very common, but here also you are looking at yield, so it's a very, very, very different experience. It's not the same MES that you're going to find in the discrete patches.
Strawberry jam, boy. Makes me hungry.
Exactly, me too. Any other comments? If not, then we are looking at some of the user reviews here, and this is coming from 2020.
There you go. What size of company this is targeting?
Exactly, and sometimes I'm shocked, to be honest. Okay, because when you look at the 1,000 to 5,000, you're almost close to $1 billion in revenue in my mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty sizable company for Aptin Ross.
That's huge.
Yeah, but I mean, typically these guys are using 2-3 different ERP systems, and they are probably using at divisional level.
They apparently love this.
Yeah, but they just don't know what they don't know.
Yeah. They've already got it. They better love it. They better love it.
Yeah. So here we are talking about quality group for audits and any product tracing that is required, which is very nice time saver. Because again, nice time saver is a very subjective, phrase there. You have not seen what other products and the processes and the companies can do. Once you know that, then you will know how much you can save money in operational efficiency. Until you know, you are probably going to be happy with what you got. For me, in materials, production planning and distribution, the ERP functions in inventory, job creation, and the soon to be implemented Planet together have the most impact. I don't know what that is, to be honest. If you guys have any commentary there, that didn't nothing meaningful. The system itself does not seem to be very intuitive, obviously because of once you start using it, the only thing you are going to know in your heart is something is not right. They just don't understand, because business users don't really have as much programming or the technology background to be able to understand how user interfaces work. The only thing they are going to feel is it's not intuitive.
Well, they don't exactly, and they don't know what they don't know.
Exactly.
I mean, they've been probably using this product for who knows how many years, so they are fluent and they know how to navigate this product, but they don't know why it should be different, and so they like it.
Dave, you have a comment?
Well, just to that point, quick, Andy, there is a time used on this slide, less than 12 months in the upper left.
Yeah,
there.
I was looking at the arrow at the top right, but that was March 2020 when it was less than 12 months, right?
Yeah.
So it's 3 years, 4 years almost. But we don't know if they like it still now. You're right. Yeah, it was like they just went live at 12 months. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good observation to be on. That's a great comment as well.
Really good. I was looking strictly at Sam's arrow there, not at the.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, the comment is really great, Andy, because, initially you are probably going to like it because you are going to get something better than what you had before. But once you start getting into the depth of the product, then you'll know how much problem you are going to have.
Yeah.
I mean, chances are that audit team was dealing with a lot of Excel crunching
Exactly.
to, capture that data previously. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah. Within a year, it's very hard to know. I mean, probably you have done once a couple of closes. You have managed a year is a very short time after going live to know whether the product
right.
is
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. There should be more opportunity to drill down from within versus having to go from one tab to another to get the information. So traceability is what they are talking about in general. In the smaller products, you are not going to have as superior traceability that you're going to find slightly in newer products. So two things to take away from this particular slide. Number one is going to be the older products are not going to be as intuitive. They are also not going to be as traceable because the older data model was not as traceable in general. Okay, it was very difficult to correlate these data elements, and that's why they were so difficult to use. The newer systems, they have far superior traceability built as part of the relational model. So you are going to, again, in this, you are working hard. You just don't know. You don't feel right. That's what you are going to know. But smaller products, in general, the traceability is going to be really hard. So that's the issue. Then we have 2017. So roughly 8 years now. They have been using for 2 years, 2017. So they must have started in 2015. So 8 years in total. Company size, and again, I'm shocked based on the company size that this product is using. And I did interview some of the customers that were using Aptin Ross, and sometimes I'm shocked. I'm like, okay, I don't know how you are using it. I mean, I had $1 billion, customer that were on Aptin and they were doing everything. I'm like, okay, how are your transactions running? But somehow they are running. I don't know. I mean, I'm missing something here, but maybe they don't have as many transactions, I guess, and that could be the reason why they are able to survive on that. But sometimes it's just shocking that such a small product can work for such a large business. Here they are talking about definitely customer focused and listen to customer user community. So that's a comment about Aptin, that in general, they are very friendly for customers. They are known to have really good support in general. But when I spoke to some of the customers that were getting switched on Aptin, they were not happy with the support because the previous support was better. So when they were into more mom and pop setting, they provided far more sort of the consulting expertise, the support, because they are not going to have as much legal obligations. When you are dealing with a company that is going to be owned by private equity or they are going to be public, they go through very different scrutiny in terms of what kind of support they can provide. And sometimes it's not just about them knowing the concept. Sometimes they don't want to help you because that could be a legal obligation for them because of the contractual obligation. So keep in mind, I mean, product companies, they go through different scrutiny. So you are not going to get the same help that you might get either from mom and pop product companies or mom and pop consulting companies. Okay, here another one. I mean, see, most of them are fairly big in size because the reason for that is in this space, a lot of companies cannot compete. SAP is probably not going to compete. Microsoft does compete. Oracle is probably not going to touch this, in my mind, unless you are talking about JD Edwards, which had the process functionality. Now, Oracle Cloud ERP, I don't know how deep they are in process, but for the most part, you are looking at a lot of IT spend to be successful in this vertical. Here we are talking about, and that could be the reason why Aptin is so successful here, and they are able to target such large account. So this is food and beverage, 2 years, 2019. One of the comment, and this is where the interesting things go. Okay, so the people who have used the product for a long time, what they have done is they have made your screens prettier. But when you are going to get into the real customization, the only people who can customize this product are going to be number one, Aptin, and even inside Aptin, there are going to be 2 people who are going to know the product. So good luck with that customization. Number 1, they are going to be unreachable. Number 2, they are going to be super expensive. And number 3, they might not even understand your requirement, or they might not even care because they are so much in demand in general, the way they like to think or the way they like to work. So again, that's a huge risk in my mind when I look at some of these products, which are going to have the programming language from 1970s. They had made some cosmetic changes on the product and somehow made it look great. So if you are simply looking at functional checkpoints and the pretty demos, good luck with that product because it's going to be fun once you start using it. You need to look under the hood, and you need a mechanic who can really understand what is happening inside the product itself to be able to identify these issues. But again, once you dig deeper into the layers of the reviews, that's where you are going to find. And here, the user has very clearly reported that the development language is not mainstream. I don't know what they are using. Most likely, they must be on COBOL for the most part. I don't think they have changed the backend architecture. They have not even changed the front-end architecture because obviously it's very expensive. And I don't know how many customer Aptin Ross has as of today.
Well, they certainly had, I mean, it's been around for decades. They certainly had a very strong following. How strong that following is today, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, but indeed, you understand how expensive developers are. Even if they open their mouth, that's $100 right there.
Oh,
okay, so when they are going to code and test.
Yep, link your eye.
Yeah, it's like going for a court case and lawyers billing, it takes fortune to build these products, when you are looking at products like this. So when you are carrying 200 products, there is no way in the hell you can modernize the backend architecture. You cannot afford that. No company can afford that. Nobody has that much money. They cannot justify. That's the problem. So one more review. We have 6 minutes right now. Let me cover this, and then we can probably open up for... Do you guys have a lot to talk? Do you want to talk, or do you want to cover the review?
You
guys tell me.
Review.
Dave, review or comment?
Review? Yeah, let's cover this last review, I'd say.
Okay. So here, one of the things that they have mentioned is the process-based costing. So what do you like best about Aptin process manufacturing? And they have used the term called process-based costing and tracking. That's a very unique term in general. And the way the process-based costing is going to be very different in general, the way your costing works in your discrete manufacturing. And this particular user has appreciated that. Because obviously it's aligned to what they want to see in a product. So again, look into that. That's a very specific term and very specific capability. So if you are evaluating this for the process batch, make sure the product has support for that. Lot tracking is excellent. User experience is slightly behind the market. One more confirmation, lot traceability cost tracking. Trace express lot trace went from hours to minutes. Costing is complex, but very configurable. Again, it depends upon where the user is coming from. I don't think this user may have as much experience overall in complex ERP. So that's why they might be thinking that it's probably complex. But that's it for the review. I have got 5 minutes.
One of the comments on that last review said get buy-in from the highest levels. And, generically speaking, I understand that's how people investigate and evaluate systems. They try to get buy-in. They try to get everyone on the same page, and then they buy the system that's the biggest vote. And I was doing a webinar 3 weeks ago on how to select ERP software, and one of the persons that was attending, it was interesting what he said, because he evaluated software with his previous company, and they ended up buying the large Dynamics F&O system. But it didn't have a functionality that he was supply chain manager. It didn't have a functionality that he absolutely must have needed. However, he was only one vote. there was 10 other votes.
Yeah.
So he got outvoted. And, it always blows my mind how people do these evaluations and how they try to figure out which is the best ERP for them. You want to talk to companies that are similar to yourself. In this case, food process or chemical type process, or somebody similar to yourself that's already using these systems, and find out what it is they don't like. That's the other thing about when you're calling references. So often it's delegated to somebody who doesn't even want to make the call at all. And they say, how do you like it? And the person says, oh, it's okay. And then they go, oh, yeah, it's fine. And then that's it. And they don't have a clue. Focus and ask what it is that, because every ERP has things you don't like. I don't care which one it is. They all have pros and cons. Find out what it is you don't like, and then decide whether you can live with that. Because as you're going through the implementation, number one, you don't want surprises. And number two, you got to put up with that. So you got to know in advance so you can start planning around those challenges. Sorry for rambling there.
That was worthwhile as always, Andy. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the interesting kind of, thoughts I had throughout this one is, and Sam, you kind of mentioned it, and it's come up in some previous discussions. But I think what's really interesting from my perspective is, when you are kind of separate outside of the evaluation phase and selecting, right? Because so often we go into organizations where something's pre-existing, but what they do have is, some sort of a growth plan that they're executing against. And that could be acquisition strategy, that could be new product development, those types of things. So one of the things that really stood out for me today, again, because I'm not, I haven't done a ton of work in the process manufacturing space, but, as you're thinking about your business and those plans and how that growth, how you're going to achieve those growth goals, understanding what the different business models are that you're ultimately investigating, whether that's through product development and or acquisition strategy. I mean, that's going to have a huge impact on your overall system architecture. And I think it's not something that a lot of people, are thinking about. It's an afterthought. And today for me, that really stood out just because of kind of the uniqueness of the process flow for a process manufacturing business compared to, what we typically talk about. So I felt like that was kind of, a good takeaway for today in terms of people thinking about how this system architecture really comes together to support what their ultimate plans are, from a growth standpoint.
Yeah, the shocking part there in that comment, Dave, to be honest, I mean, even the private equity does not think about that. When they're buying the company, they are not even looking at.
I think that's kind of the point, though, right? It's like it's a complete afterthought. And I've seen it firsthand, which is really interesting because, kind of in a perfect world, right, you would think that this was not an afterthought, that this was very planned out, that you have an idea of what kind of infrastructure you're going to need to put in place from a system standpoint, especially in that world, because I mean, that's how they're making their money, right? Yeah. So it's really wild to me. I mean, it just, for whatever reason, it really stood out to me today, going through this one. So.
Yeah. And I mean, I have seen this all the time, to be honest. I mean, that's why sometimes the private equity acquisitions are $1 million disasters, because you are right. I mean, the only thing they are doing is, number one, system architecture improvement, number two, marketing. What value add do they have? I mean, they might bring talent. That's it, right? Three things. What else can they do? I don't think they do anything else. And if one of them is going to be disaster, how are you going to make your money?
Yeah. Yeah. And on the opposite side of that, privately held, you think about, people are in a lot of cases, they are developing the market after they've already decided on the product, which means that this is, not a conversation either, right? There is no infrastructure or system architecture that is going into the evaluation of saying, like, well, how are we going to support this from that aspect? And how can we leverage, either what we have or looking at some alternatives to be able to, again, fully optimize what we're talking about launching. It's really incredible. So pretty interesting today.
Amazing, guys. Any more short comments? No? All right, guys, that's it for today. If you joined for the first time, this was part of our industry series for which we meet every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you guys are going to be here next week. We are going to come back with another review. On that note, thanks everybody for tuning in tonight.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.